So it's like we're going about it all wrong. And, giving kids all of this information about anxiety and depression and warning signs, it's like, yes, we need that. But if that's the only thing we're showing, that's terrifying as a teenager. You look at that and you go, well, I don't want to be one of those weird people that has those symptoms that sound really scary. And so then it makes you even more likely that you don't want to talk about it. And there's more stigma around it. So it's like this black and white of like the people that apparently are quote unquote normal and, don't have issues and they're happy. And then there's the people that are, have mental health issues. And because we have this dichotomy, it means that everyone, whenever they struggle, thinks there's something wrong with them.
You are listening to What We Should Have Learned in School. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you find yourself in the world. I am thrilled to have today's guest on. Her name is Hayley, and I want to get right into it because she's a psychologist that is doing what I have dreamed that someone would do, and that is bringing mental health education to the classroom. As many know, the title of this podcast is What We Should Have Learned in School. And I think that for me, Hayley, this was a realization I had pretty early where I was about 12 years old and there was a family member that was suicidal and had come to live with us. And for some reason, insight and wisdom can strike at any age. I think sometimes that's a misunderstanding that we have about youth and wisdom only being tied to age. But I realized, everything they're telling me about, getting the education and I also am a singer, so, wanting to be like Britney Spears at the time. I was like, there's something missing. If you don't have a sense of well-being internally, all of that doesn't really matter. So I'm curious, what inspired you to create your program with Open Parachute?
Yes. And I mean, I love what you were saying about insight can strike at any age. I mean, in the work that I do, the thing that has always inspired me is how wise teenagers are. And I think I instinctively saw that and knew that from a very young age. And I think part of the inspiration, it's always our own story. And I think, I think I did struggle when I was a teenager and didn't know that I was struggling. And didn't think to look for support. And it was only when I was an adult that I actually got into therapy and actually started realizing, these things that happened to me when I was younger, they were impacting my behavior. So that whole journey. And then when I was quite young, when I was in my undergraduate degree, I actually studied criminology first. But I started mentoring this young girl who was 14 and was in the criminal justice system already and had, committed crimes and had just had this horrific life and so much trauma and so much abuse. And she was this amazing, wise teenager, like in so many ways. I was learning more from her than she was from me. She had so much depth of experience and the way she could think, you only get through the things she's been through. And so I think right away at that early place in my career, I recognized, we've got it all wrong. We think that going through something hard is a negative. We think that mental health issues are bad. That is the opposite. What happens when we struggle and what happens when we go into what people would consider to be, something that's, anxiety or depression or whatever, that's the gateway to incredible wisdom and depth, because we're starting to explore what it means to be human and what it means to be ourselves. And it's only through suffering that we really start to define ourselves and we start to say, actually, I'm unique and I can decide who and what I am. And so I think right from the beginning, I just had this just absolute admiration of teenagers. And I think the more time that goes on, the more I think teenagers getting wiser and wiser, because I think they're experiencing more and more at young ages. And so that's really been the driving factor and the reason I built the program around sharing the documentary stories of teenagers, because they're the teachers. And that's the way I think it, of course, there's wisdom from the older generations, absolutely, but we can't discount the wisdom from youth, and we want to meld those. And that's what I'm really passionate about doing.
Oh, that is music to my heart. It's music to my heart, Hayley. Because, I have a background in social work. So I worked in social work capacities in New York City with, the kids were anywhere between 5 years old up to 19. And I started that job when I was actually quite young, my very early 20s. So some of my clients are almost my age. And it was kind of a really interesting thing. But I think I even realized then that I wasn't the the guru per se. It wasn't up
Yeah.
to me. It
Yes.
was up to someone seeing something for themselves about being human, because
Yes.
that is the only way I've seen in my career.
Yeah.
And again, your experience too sounds
Yeah.
similar. It's the only way sustainable change can
Yes.
really take root.
Absolutely. And what we need when we're young and at any age is we need someone to see us and value us and appreciate us. We need the connection. We don't need them to tell us what to do. And no one, when you're a teenager, you don't want anyone to tell you what to do. You're not going to listen anyway. So it's like we're going about it all wrong. And, giving kids all of this information about anxiety and depression and warning signs. It's like, yes, we need that. But if that's the only thing we're showing, that's terrifying as a teenager. You look at that and you go, well, I don't want to be one of those weird people that has those symptoms that sound really scary. And so then it makes you even more likely that you don't want to talk about it. And there's more stigma around it. So it's like this black and white of like the people that apparently are quote unquote normal and, don't have issues and they're happy. And then there's the people that are, have mental health issues. And because we have this dichotomy, it means that everyone, whenever they struggle, thinks there's something wrong with them. But the
Yes.
reality is every single one of us struggles. There's no such thing as a person that doesn't struggle. And
Oh,
and
yes.
normal, I mean, what we think of as normal is really just cut off, right?
Yes.
Let's pretend everything's fine. That's not what we should be encouraging teenagers to go for. We should be encouraging to go into the depth of life and struggle and triumph and all these things. That's part of life, but we don't show that pathway. So that's what I'm really passionate about, is showing that life can be a hero's journey. It can be
Yeah.
a intense and hard and really rewarding when you dig deep.
Yeah. And I think there's something too about when you're a teenager. I'll speak back for myself because I had a very interesting experience myself where I split my high school years. So the first 2 years, I was like one of the quote unquote popular kids. Life was good. I was singing, I was playing basketball, I was friends with everyone. So I
Yep.
bridged a lot of the groups. And
Yep.
then when I transferred schools, junior
Oh,
year,
fascinating. Yes.
as a young female coming in, it was something I hadn't experienced before. I had
Yep.
typically been very quote unquote extroverted, right? I
Yep.
don't love labels, but we'll just
Yep.
say
Yep.
that just for, again,
Yep.
outgoing.
Yep.
And it was very difficult, and it took me a very long time to
Mhm.
really recognize what had been going on, that it wasn't a reflection of me. And
Yes,
even
that's it.
yes,
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 that's it. And
yeah,
because you didn't have a role model or people telling you that going to a new school is really hard and that it's
yeah,
normal to feel anxious and socially anxious and insecure and unsure of yourself and all these really normal emotions, nobody told you that. So therefore, of course, that's what everybody does. We all think, well, I'm the problem. There's something wrong with me. Especially when you you have this other experience. Well, why did things used to be so easier? Or you look at other people and say, why is it easy for them? But
yeah.
it's like that. It's like we don't know that other side of the story of that struggle. Yeah, that's a great learning that you had at that age, right? To go into that. And I bet, so that's a perfect example of, if you hadn't switched schools, even though it was really hard and probably a lot of the time you probably wish you didn't switch schools, I bet you that experience has served you so well in your life, right? That learning at that age of what does it mean to value myself even when other people aren't valuing me. I mean, you couldn't learn a better lesson, and to learn it in high school, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing too, if we can reflect back, it shows also the fundamental instability, right? That we can, one thing we can be sure of is that things are going to change throughout our lives. And I think I was under the impression before I changed schools that, again, if you got all the outside accomplishments, if you looked the perfect body weight, that okay, your
Yes.
life is going to be set.
Yes.
It really just, it furthered
Yes.
that initial insight at 12
Yes.
years old about, wait a minute, why are
Absolutely.
celebrities not happy?
Yes, absolutely. The ultimate illusion that
Yes.
it's, these external things that are going to make us happy. And the world teenager growing up in now is even more extreme, because it's all social media and curated images. And it is that belief system that, it's so fascinating that we've bought into it so fully, that
Mhm.
if you have enough money, if you look a certain way, if you're a certain weight, if you have a certain partner, if you have a certain job, if you live a certain place, then you'll be happy. And also even just the desire to be happy in general, because happiness is an emotion just like any emotion. It comes and goes. So
Yes.
it's like we can never hold on to it, but that's it. That's what we do as humans, because life is scary, and it's scary to feel things. And so we want to make things solid. We want to hold on to something and say, well, this is going to finally mean that I never have to suffer, but that can't happen. So that pursuit is just constantly being in a state of disappointment with ourselves because we can't reach it. So it's really that, you're right, learning that at that age. And that's what, that's why I feel like when teenagers can learn that at that young age, the things that they can accomplish in their life, like that's what just excites me to no end. It's like, I only learned this stuff as an adult, but to learn this as a teenager, what can you do if you are free to be actually who you are and live up to your fullest potential and make choices based on your own intuition and what you feel is right, and go against the grain when it calls for it. Then we have this like vibrant society of free thinkers and passionate, people that are going to do positive things in the world, rather than everyone trying to fit themselves into this box and be like everyone else and no one really feeling satisfied with themselves.
Isn't that the irony? I think in my work and in my life experience too, it's like, and maybe when you have this, when you're sitting down with someone too, it's like, I can't tell you how common it is for someone to have insecure thought. We all have insecure
Oh,
thought. We all
absolutely.
have that I'm not enough in this, but
Yes.
we get tricked into thinking that it's only us, but there's billions of us walking
Yes.
around with
Yes.
exactly the same thought.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. And as soon as we can recognize it and see it for what it is, then the shame sort of fades away. And then we can just look at it and say, oh, that's just a thought. That's just a normal human thought, but I don't have to believe that thought. But we can't do that. It's like mental exercise, right? We can't do that until we practice that, until we have role models around that, until, we have to build that skill, because it is a skill. It's a skill of zooming out. It's a skill of being caught in a thought or a feeling and being able to stop, recognize you're caught, and then move back, look at it and say, ooh, what's happening? Okay, where did that thought come from? Do I want to listen to it or not? And it's something that we all have the capacity to do, but it requires a different way of working with our mind. And this is another thing that's so exciting, is kids can learn that skill quite easily. As soon as you present it to them, and as soon as you sort of say, hey, is that thought really true? I mean, it's as simple as a question like that. Or, hey, why don't you notice even that idea? Like most of us and teenagers, asking what thoughts are you having? We don't even know we're having thoughts.
Yes.
It's just reality. It's not, I'm having a thought that I'm not good enough. It's, I'm not good enough.
Exactly.
So, but it's like when you can start introducing these topics, teenage brains, and all of us, I mean, everyone, we have the flexibility in our mind, but we can our mind just starts to loosen a little bit and become a little bit more flexible and a little bit more able to navigate and make choices and not be so reactive. And that's when we really find, I don't like the word happy in a sense. You probably get that already, because it's like, that's not what we're looking for. It's like fulfillment. Yes. That's when we feel fulfilled, because we'll go into the fear and the anxiety and the sadness, and then we'll go into the joy and the excitement, and ultimately we'll find work or life that means something to us, because we're not as scared to go either of those places. Mm-hmm. We're just living what feels right for us.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I'm so glad we came across each other. This is wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about the logistics. So the social media thing, you actually beat me to it, because I was going to say, I can't even imagine, because I didn't even grow up in the social media era when I was going through my own experience. So what does it look like in the classroom? What are some of the results? Just anything you want to share about the actual program.
Beautiful. Yes. So the premise of the program is teaching practical mental health skills. So not dumping information, not saying these are what the diagnoses are, but really, I mean, we give that a little bit, but more it's how do we help teenagers learn to work with their minds in this way, so that no matter what they face at any point in their life, they have the tools to overcome challenges. And the program is designed to fit into the curriculum. So this is the big thing. It's not an add-on. It's not a, one day here and there. It's like we're in 3 countries already, hopefully expanding more. So Canada, the US, and Australia. So mapped onto the curriculum within those, health classes or, PE, wellbeing classes, wherever it fits in the program or in the curriculum. And then the way that it's taught is through video. So we all know as teenagers, you know, who they're used to listening to is their peers, who they want to listen to is their peers. And they're used to engaging with video. You know, this is the world they're used to. And so when we come in with these mental health, you know, information or documents or whatever it is, that's dry, or that's delivered by an adult, or that's, you know, it just doesn't resonate. And so our whole aim is to make learning about mental health cool and interesting and fun, right? So the teachers are actually teenagers. So we filmed teenagers, and so in each program the teenagers are local to the area. So we have, you know, the Canadian kids, we have in the Canadian program, we have American kids in the American program, Australian kids in the Australian program. And so we find these amazing teenagers and we create documentary films. So we actually sort of, I've become a little bit of a documentary filmmaker inadvertently in all of this, which is actually so fun. And so we create these films around these teenagers telling their story. And then the videos have a combination of the storytelling, so the coming from the peers, as well as myself as a clinical psychologist coming on and sort of framing it and saying, you know, this is what they said, this is what you can take from it. So really taking them on a journey. And the reason we've done it that way is so that, because we all know that teenagers need to learn mental health. They need to build these skills. But right now, you know, teachers are being dumped with this burden of, oh, you thought you studied to be a teacher. Now you have to be a counselor. You have to be a mental health practitioner. You have to be a psychiatrist and a psychologist. You know, so so the program is designed that the teaching comes through the videos. So the teacher doesn't actually have to give any lessons. They put the video on in the classroom. And then there's a series of slides. So it's all in an online program. There's a series of slides that come up in the classroom that have exercises. So it's partner exercises, class discussions. And then of course, right now we have our distance education version as well. So they can engage with this all at home. So that's sort of the separate model. But the one in class is so that the teacher just facilitates. So they facilitate the discussion, but they don't have to be the one with the answers, because realistically psychology is a whole other discipline, and to expect teachers to have all those answers. And also what we're really working towards is empowering teachers, because with mental health, nobody really has the answer anyway, right? It's about helping teenagers and students start asking themselves the questions. And so we're really trying to shift that whole mentality where teachers feel like they're in that position where they feel uncomfortable, or they feel like they don't know. And so they feel like they don't know how to bring these things up. So we're making it easy. And so these programs, teachers don't have to prepare at all. They literally walk into the classroom, put it on. There's 2-minute audio recordings that they listen to before each lesson that just gives them a sense of, hey, this is what we're trying to get across. And then it's just straightforward. And then, you know, the results we're seeing, it's so exciting. So the teachers love it because it's so easy, and they actually get their students engaged. Like, when do teenagers ever want to talk openly about what they're really going through in a classroom? And we've tried that. When I first made this program, we literally tried. I would go into a classroom and I would say, okay, let's do some of these things. Let's talk about this. Just silence. You know, what? You want me to talk about my negative thoughts? No way. And then they watch these videos, and it just normalizes it. And what we really are creating is the same effect as with group therapy. You know, as soon as you hear another teenager sharing, all of a sudden it's safe. And then, you know, in a classroom setting, then all of a sudden they get to see, well, hey, there's that person I thought was really popular and had this perfect life, and they have a negative thought too. Or, hey, here's this person that I never considered and I thought they were a bit weird, and hey, they have some really interesting and amazing, unique perspectives. And what we find is that the kids that struggle actually become the heroes in the classroom in this, because they know this content. You know, the people that are struggling have thought about this before. So that's what a lot of the teachers report, is that, you know, those kids that maybe were struggling in the class or weren't engaged, they all of a sudden become these sort of superstars. I mean, that's the way one teacher put it. You know, the kids that were failing become, you know, the superstars of the unit, because all of a sudden they feel connected. And then all of a sudden the teacher can develop a relationship, because they're having real conversations. Because when a student is struggling, they can't engage in school. And so it's going to look like they don't care, or they don't put effort in, or whatever it is. But as soon as they, you know, these things that they're really struggling with have been talked about, it just breaks open this whole other possibility for them. And so teachers can connect. And then the other piece is videos for parents. So we have videos that go home to parents that upskill them as well and give them information, because again, this is stuff that right now people only can access it in when they go see a psychologist. But to me, that makes no sense. Like, why shouldn't every parent know, these building blocks of what's going to help their child build resilience, and what's going to help their child, deal with addictive patterns, what's going to help their child establish, boundaries and consent, all this kind of stuff that's so important, but we miss the part where we actually have to show them how. You can't just say, respect someone else's boundaries. You can't just say that. you have to guide them in that learning. So that's our whole, I know it's a long answer to a short question, but I would get so excited about it. There's so many elements to it. So that's our program.
I'm so excited. Are you hiring salespeople? I mean, I'm going to be like, you're number one.
We may be soon. Get back to me.
Because I think you're just nailing so many things on the head, and you've already addressed some of the things I hear from my teacher circle, that it is completely overwhelming. And even the online model now, it's taken an already demanding position.
I know.
And it escalated it.
It's just, teachers are incredible. I have so much respect and appreciation for teachers always, but especially now, like the fact that they've had to literally, like, teaching online is a completely different career, so they've had to literally in a second adapt their whole curriculum, switch their whole teaching method, figure out how to, navigate that, figure out how to engage their students, like this whole thing, and being isolated themselves, going through their own struggles, having their own kids at home a lot of the time. Like, I can't even, imagine. So that's it. So the real passion I have is to solve this problem for the students and for the teachers, because we really, and we don't value teachers enough. And it's a problem. It's a real problem, because really, I can't think of a more important job. They are with kids every single day. They are shaping the future. This job should be on a pedestal. This job is phenomenal and powerful. And, we do that thing that we do in our culture where we say, well, the things that really matter, we'll just step on them. And the things that don't matter at all, we'll pretend they mean everything. Makes no sense.
That was beautifully put. Yes. But it doesn't make any sense.
No.
But what you're doing does. So that's so exciting. One thing I recognize too in my own career, it's easy to get caught up with that shiny object syndrome. But when you realize that when we show up for each other and we follow our own creative genius and our own wisdom, like what you're doing, we are making a difference person by person, because then that person goes out into their community and their friends. And I love that you're working with teenagers. My husband, okay, so really quickly, my husband is from Finland.
Oh, amazing.
In Finland, it's very different, because even going to psychology is very much stigmatized. It still is here, but in Finland, it's like, you absolutely do not do that under any circumstance. And he was a professional soccer player, and he has since said, I wish I understood where feeling came from when I was playing. So it's so practical.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you said that. Absolutely. So that is one of our big messages of this program, is like, we think of connecting to our feelings as being sort of like soft and weak, and, and this idea of vulnerability, like saying, being vulnerable, we think of that in a negative way. We think if we're vulnerable, people can hurt us. But actually, you've nailed it. Being connected to our feelings is the most powerful we can ever be. And people that are truly successful, and this is the other thing, we think as well that doing good things in the world, well, maybe that means we need to live this small life and just, be not be achieving greatness. We sort of associate greatness with those shiny objects, right? But actually, when you're following, as you've, I'm sure, done in your career, when singing is so creative and connected to your feelings, and playing sport, if you can feel, you can feel what's happening in you. You can feel when you're on, when you're off. You can feel what's happening in the players around you. You can read the game, like all of these things. And when you really connect to that, you find a purpose. That's what I'm discovering. Like, I've never worked harder in my life, but I've never had more energy for it, because I feel so excited and passionate about what I'm doing. And it's not that it's not hard, and it's not that I don't struggle, but but there's just this feeling of really creating something, and this drive and this sort of desire to keep going with it, which is really what you need to do anything big in the world. I think it's not that you need to be special in any way. You just need to find something that you connect to such a level that you can commit all in with it, and keep going with it. So I love that you brought that up. Connecting to our feelings is really when we find true strength, when we find that resilience of, well, I care more about the bigger vision, or I care more about going into this than I do about feeling insecure about it, or feeling like I'm not good enough. Well, yeah, sure. Of course I feel like that, entering the world of business as a psychologist, like, wow, so much insecurity, I'm not a business person. I don't know how to run a business, but it's like, yeah, whatever. I still care more about my mission. So I'm just going to get over that, so it's sort of like that approach, which we can only do when we're really focused on connecting to those feelings and not shutting them out.
Yeah. And fundamentally realizing it's not personal, because what he said is if he missed that first goal, forget about it. And he would be so hard on himself. And I think we can all relate to that as being a
Oh,
human,
totally.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And recognizing, like you said, like, this is just
Yeah.
a thought. This is not
Yeah.
an absolute truth. The brain
Yes.
is incredibly
Yes.
clever, and
Yeah.
it's very efficient, and it's going to
Oh
run
yeah.
those old thoughts,
Oh
and
yeah.
try to back it up with all this proof. But we're not objective.
Absolutely. We're so non-objective. And I love that you
Yeah.
said it's not personal. That is absolutely the key, because we make it personal in a heartbeat. We it's so hard for us to step back and say, if someone's unkind to me, or if someone hurt me, or if I messed up, or whatever it is, or if I failed, that must mean there's something wrong with me. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that someone hurt you, or you messed up. It's like, and then
Exactly.
there's the next moment. But we bring all of those things with us. Like, we carry it like this sack of rocks, because one thing happens and we go, well, now I'm going to keep thinking about that over and over again, and keep, reflecting on how terrible of a person I am. And then we keep carrying it, so that's the irony. So absolutely that I can relate to that with sport too. Oh gosh, when I was younger, I was so hard on myself with sport. Oh, I'd just be in the worst mood after games, for a long time. And for no reason then, I just thought I didn't do a good enough job, and
Yeah.
it's sort of like, what even is that? What even is that? What is a good enough job? Is that even what does that even mean to think that? But we all do that,
Yeah. Yeah, we do. I mean, one thing that seems to be really true for me, as I've kind of lived throughout these different modalities, whether it's business or music or mental well-being, it's like recognizing the truth that everyone really is doing the best they can in that moment. Like,
Yes.
it's so easy to go back and look back from a different perspective, from a different state of
Yes.
mind. But
Yes.
in that moment, it wasn't accessible. So it's like
Yes.
we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's such a perfect realization as well, because that is where all disagreements can be resolved. When we recognize that no one, we always attribute sort of what we think this person means.
Yeah.
We say, well, they hurt me, so they must not care about me, or they must not think I'm good enough, or they must be, whatever, selfish, or blah, blah, blah. We always have a story about that. But to
Mhm.
recognize that they're just caught in their own reaction. And we're only ever unkind or cruel or whatever we do because we're hurting, because we are hurting now, or we've been hurt in the past, and our mind has created a defense.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times our defenses are about, pushing people away. And that's it. And that's pretty much what happens anytime people get into disagreements. But it's so hard to see that and step out of it, because we feel so betrayed, or we feel so personally hurt. And again, that's a skill, right? And
Yeah.
again, it's a skill that we can learn. And if
Exactly.
we, and this is where, to have this as part of school curriculum, it's like, why would you not want to teach every single one of your citizens this skill? Because how different would the world be if we could all sort of recognize when we're getting caught up, and when we're taking things personally, and when other people's actions don't mean anything about us. It's amazing. It really, this skill leads us to become in many ways invincible, because
Yeah.
it's like things don't have to cut us so deeply. We can recognize that we can run our own race. We don't have to be worried about what other people are thinking. Not that we don't do that. Of course we do, because we're human. Of course we worry,
Right.
but it just that skill of being able to go, oh yeah, right, it doesn't matter. That's the skill.
It's like a continual remembering for me. It's like, oh, I'm caught up, and then remembering, and again, honing that as a skill. It is learnable. It really is. It really
Absolutely.
is. I love
Yes.
the research
Yes.
on resilience and children that have been exposed to traumatic events. And, there is not, how shall I say, there is always potential. There is no absolute in every single situation,
Yep.
a direct cause and effect where it has to
Yes.
be this way. Where, to your point,
Absolutely.
coming,
Yeah.
full circle,
Yeah.
that we can use our suffering in the past as not to perpetuate more trauma, but to
Yes.
perpetuate resilience. And I agree,
Exactly.
we don't talk about that enough in
Yeah.
mainstream society, girlfriend. We are on the same
I
page.
know, I know. And absolutely, I love what you said there. Yet there is no absolute truth, right? We think this happened to me, therefore I must be X, or I will never be X, right? Or this is the way I am, and this is the way I will always be. That never has to be true.
Exactly.
Everything can change. That's the terrifying part about our lives, and that's the most exciting part about our lives. Everything can change. And like,
Exactly.
how powerful is that to see that? Because when you're a teenager, even more so, the world seems so small. And, if things are hard in high school, we don't know at that age that there's a life beyond that. We can't conceptualize it because that's all we've known. So to be
Exactly.
able to see that, wait a minute, just because some people are being mean to me in high school, that doesn't mean anything about me or my life or how my life is going to go. But that takes a lot, that takes a huge amount of skill to be able to see that. But
Yeah.
we can teach that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I knew we were going to go over time. I just got
I
so
know, sorry.
excited, Haley.
It's so great talking to you.
Oh my goodness.
Amazing.
Yes, I think this is the first of many, many following conversations. I
Definitely.
hope I can support, because I'm so gung ho. I mean, honestly, that was the inspiration of the title of the podcast.
Yeah.
What we should have learned. So I'm like, oh my gosh, someone's actually doing
I
this. Like,
know.
great.
I know. When you reached out to me, I was like, what a great podcast. Thank you
Oh
for
my
putting this
goodness.
on. It's
It's so
fantastic.
foundational. But okay, all right. Well, to wrap it up in a nice tight button. So here we go. Let's try, Haley. Let's try.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that you wanted, first off, teachers to take home from today, what would that be?
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest take home for teachers would be the only thing that students really need is empathy. So having their feelings seen and heard, and to know that they're normal. That's it. So really don't be scared of all the jargon and the mumbo jumbo and all the risk and all the things we hear about mental health that are really terrifying, and just focus on, you can't fix things for them. It's not your job to make it better. It's okay if they're struggling, and all you need to do is just remind them, just say, hey, I see that you're sad, and that's okay. It's normal to be sad. Is there someone that you can talk to about that? That's it. Just that little brief thing, and then help them align with it, because that little exchange, can normalize, can just say, hey, it's okay to talk about this. And sometimes you might be the only one that said that. And this is why I think teachers are so powerful, because you have these relationships, these ongoing relationships with kids. And so just, that's all that you need. And that will make such a huge difference for students. And then in your classrooms, you can also bring these things up sort of in front of the class. Like, you can say things like, it's normal to struggle. It's normal to have things be hard, or if someone does something in the class and all the students are kind of reacting or laughing or thinking they're weird, show empathy out loud. Say, I would imagine, I can understand being that angry, or I can understand being that upset. He must be, they must be really struggling. Just, you frame these things. Teenagers will jump on board if we just take that lead and show that vulnerability. And if you feel comfortable sharing your own experiences, I use that a lot with teenagers, not things that, if I'm currently struggling with something, but things that are in the past, or I can reflect on, or have resolved, or whatever it is, to just normalize it. Say, hey, yeah, even getting in front of a class makes me really anxious. That's a really great thing to share, because if that's true for you, how validating is that for
Yeah.
for the students then when they get up and do a presentation or whatever it is. So just bringing that conversation of feelings into the classroom is so powerful.
Awesome. Awesome. And where can folks find out more about you and your work, Haley?
Yes. So our website is openparachuteschools.com. And so that's where all of our programs are. And then on LinkedIn and on, I have a Twitter account that I sometimes use. I'm figuring out how to use it. And on Instagram, Dr. Hayley Watson. So DrHayleyWatson.
Perfect. I will make sure to put those all in the show notes. And
Perfect.
yeah, I don't want to stop talking, but I guess
I
we have
know.
to.
Yes,
Healing the world.
no, totally. Yes, yes. I mean, you've got. I think we're definitely aligned in how we see things. I'd love to chat again. So you just let me know.
Perfect. We'll do that. We'll do that, Haley. Well, take care. And
Thank
again,
you.
I will be following your progress very, very closely because it's really near and dear to my heart. So I'm here to support in any way I can.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Haley. Have a good one.
Pleasure.